Hi, my name is Jack Predovic, and this is my presentation of my ISTA 322 final project. And I did my project on Chicago restaurant ratings with or without a sidewalk cafe permit. So basically, in Chicago, there are these unique permits that you need to have in order to have an outdoor restaurant seating area on the public way, and these seating areas are known as sidewalk cafes, which is kind of a cute little name for them. So I collected my data from this project using Yelp API and a CSV file, which contained a list of current permits businesses had for sidewalk cafes. So we started with just installing the Yelp API, mounting it to my Google Drive, simple stuff that we did with the homeworks in class. And then here we import the Yelp API as well as importing pandas and importantly the JSON normalize function, which we will be using to flatten the data. So now we're going to begin with flattening and organizing the Yelp data. And one of the main issues I ran into while doing this was that Yelp API has some limits associated with it. So I was only able to pull data for 50 restaurants at a time, which meant I wasn't just able to simply obtain data for every restaurant in the city. So I had to divide it down into multiple smaller queries for different restaurant types and then turn all of those into smaller data frames. So you can see here we have American, Italian, Chinese, Mexican, Greek, French, coffee, etc. So then we wanted to combine all these smaller data frames into one large one, which we did using the PD concatenate function. And then here we can see that data frame. We can see that we have a lot of different columns here. We have a lot of unnecessary columns. So here we keep the only ones that we need, which are ID, name, review count, and rating. And then we drop the duplicates, which takes care of certain restaurants that were in multiple categories in the search. And that's all the cleaning we have to do for the Yelp API. Now we move on to the Sidewalk Cafe Permit CSV file. So I have that file on my Google Drive. We use the pd.read command to read it, and we can see that this is what it looks like. As permit number, doing as business name is going to be the same as name in the other file, so that's how we'll be able to combine these data sets. Again, there's just a lot of unnecessary columns like ward and latitude, which we're not going to use. And although there are some NaN values in this data set, a lot of them are in columns that we don't really need, like street type. So we can just simply only select the columns that we need. And there we go. Easy cleaning for that data set. So now we're going to merge our two data sets and create some new data frames. So here we're going to use the merge function to merge on name and doing as business name, which is going to create some redundant columns, but we'll take care of that later. And we know that the merge worked properly because no rows were removed. And now we're going to, we want to create a data frame for only restaurants that have permits. So we're going to drop all the NaN values to get that data frame right here. Has all the data for, we can see only 14 restaurants out of the 524 actually have the Sidewalk Cafe permits, which was quite interesting, quite a low number. And then we're going to do a similar process, but this time we're going to create a data frame, and this has only all of the ones without Sidewalk Cafe permits. And then here I want to create one big master data frame with a new column that indicates whether or not a business actually has a Sidewalk Cafe permit. So we do that here. We create the new column has permit, which tells us that information. And then yeah, we have that right there. Now we're going to begin loading the data into AWS. So we're going to install the MySQL connector, install all the functions that we need to use, run query, SQL head, all of that. And now we're going to make our first table, which is going to be the restaurants table, which is going to have the name and ID for all of these Chicago restaurants. And then we're going to make a restaurant data table, which is going to have the ID as the primary key linking it back to the restaurant table. And then it's going to have the review count, rating, and the indication of whether or not the restaurant has a permit for all of them. And then here we're going to do one last one, which is the restaurant permit information. So this is going to have, again, ID is the primary key linking it back to the restaurants table. And it is going to have the permit number and street for all of the restaurants that do have permits. So now that all that's been loaded into the AWS database, we can run some sample queries on it. So the first one, we can imagine a person's looking for highly rated restaurants that also have sidewalk cafe seating to visit when the weather is nice. And we get them 5 restaurants right here. A person is interested in finding restaurants with sidewalk cafe seating specifically on Division Street. So we can run a query for them to find 2 restaurants right here. A tourist is simply looking for the highest rated and most popular restaurants, regardless of whether or not they have sidewalk cafe seating. So this is a pretty simple query. Returns just the best restaurants with the most reviews. Query number 4, a pedestrian in the city on a rainy day is looking for a highly rated restaurant to eat at, but wants to avoid those with sidewalk cafe seating so they can sit inside. We can do that, find them a bunch of restaurants right here that they can potentially go to. And then lastly, a Chicago local is interested in finding some hidden gem restaurants, which they define as sidewalk cafe seating and less than 50 reviews. So we can find them 2 restaurants right here that they might want to check out. And then lastly, created a couple box plots here. This one we can see side by side the ratings for no permits versus restaurants with permits. We can see it's pretty similar. And the restaurants with permits, the wide IQR is likely just due to the very small sample size that we have, only being 14 of those restaurants. And another one here, we have sidewalk cafe permits versus review count, which again, you see there's a lot more outliers for the no permits because it's a very large sample size. But again, the median values are fairly similar. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.